Welcome to Profitable Women, a podcast for the female business owner who wants to build a profitable and sustainable business that aligns with their life. We will talk about the money stories impacting your decisions, financial strategies to grow your profits, and how to embrace your female superpowers. I'm your host, Sheila Hansen, certified public accountant, business mentor, and certified coach. As a mom of three and business owner, I have spent the last 7 years supporting six-figure business owners make confident financial decisions while raising my babies. After making the hard decision to leave my job at a public accounting firm when I had my oldest, I'm now on a mission to empower women to build wealth without sacrificing themselves. If you find yourself avoiding conversations about money, are burnt out from working all the time, wonder where your cash goes, or want to learn how to pay yourself six figures, you're in the right place. Remember, the information in this podcast is general in nature and for educational purposes only. For specific financial advice for your situation, please consult a professional. Now, with that out of the way, let's get to the show. Welcome back to another episode of Profitable Women. Today, I get to invite a former guest back on the podcast. I haven't done that so far or very often, and so it's really special that I get to have Makenna back on my podcast. This time, we are going to be digging into her experience and journey with starting a business during college. So if you go back and listen to episode 72, you'll get to hear a little bit about her experience in Profit Shift and how she's grown as a business owner since then. But now we're kind of rewinding and going back to the beginning of the story of her starting business. So welcome back to the podcast, Makenna.
I am so excited to be here again.
This is the last time she was on was her very first podcast episode and recording anywhere. So now we get to say she's experienced and back on here to share her journey with you. So Makenna, I'm just going to fire off some questions and you can jump in with your answer and kind of go from there. But you are a videographer and work in the ag space. But when you think back to being in college, what made you decide or what contributed to the decision to start your own business versus taking whatever you were learning in college from your major to another business? What was kind of going through your head at that time?
Yeah, great question. So I guess to bring it back to day one of Harmony Media, or I guess before Harmony Media was even a thing, my major in college was agribusiness, which, has ties to what I do today, but it wasn't agricultural communications, which is what most people doing what I do would have majored in. I had no interest in holding a camera or telling stories or anything like that. In fact, I was more interested in being in the sales industry in college. I'm kind of the person that has blinders on when I'm ready to do something. I am, locked down and going to make that happen. So I had this perfect idea of what my ag sales career would look like. I was getting internships every summer. And then the summer before my junior year, I had a feed sales internship, which once again would have played perfect into the story of going to be an ag salesperson, right? The feed sales internship was through Purina Livestock Nutrition, but they placed me at a small co-op in Missouri close to home. And whenever I was on the first week at the job at this feed sales internship, my idea of what this job would entail was going door to door, selling bags of feed and, talking to farmers all day. And that could not have been further from what my reality looked like, which was totally fair. Obviously, this business isn't just going to send this 19-year-old out to do her own thing on the first day. But towards the end of the week, I was kind of wondering, okay, what is this summer going to look like? I was their first ever intern, like I said, small local co-op. So we were kind of learning together. They ended up saying, we don't really need somebody to go door to door selling feed. We trust that, you're going to get a lot out of this, but that's probably not what this is going to look like. However, we have a Facebook page that needs ran. And they, their personnel was too busy and didn't have the know-how at the time to do it. And so they said, that's your project this summer. So my first step was Googling literally how to run a business page on social media. What am I doing? Like, all I know how to do is scroll. So I made it my mission to do my best job. And in the process of learning how to run a business social page, I kept seeing video. You need to do video, short form, vertical content was in at the time and still is. So I leaned into that. Like I said, not knowing much, I was like, all right, I guess I'll do what this random social media article says. And I started really leaning into that. I bought some cheap mics on Amazon and used my phone to start interviewing farmers about their, experience with certain feed products as this period of feed sales intern. That was kind of what I needed to lean into. And making little silly videos is what I'll call them now. I know it was more than that, but to me, it felt like this is just for fun. I am really enjoying telling people stories, getting to be behind the camera, learning so much in the process. And I'm telling a long story here, but I ultimately fell in love with storytelling in the ag industry. And towards the end of that summer, I thought, I'm getting paid to do this. This could be a career, but I feel like it could go deeper than just these silly little videos that I was making at the time. And so I started investing in more equipment, spending a lot of time in YouTube University, I like to call it, because like I said, I was an ag biz major. Nobody was talking about camera settings or storylines or anything like that in my classes. So I just kind of went in. I was interested. And like I said, I'm the kind of person when I'm interested in something, I'm going to make it happen. I got the blinders on. And so that went on. I started making fun videos just of my cousin's livestock and my boyfriend's family's operation just to learn and practice. And I like to say it snowballed from there. And then that fall, after the summer internship, as I had just been spending every bit of free time I had playing with this craft of video and really enjoying it as a hobby, I was like, okay, if I'm going to start charging money, because people started taking notice to, oh, she's doing this with her phone and a little drone. Maybe she could come video my event, or maybe we can make a little harvest video. And at the time I wasn't charging much, but people were starting to offer to pay me a couple $100 here and there. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to spend all my money on all this equipment, I probably should start charging. And this might need to be a business. I had no idea that it would be anything more than just a weekend hobby. But like I said, people started to notice that I was doing it, and it took up more and more of my time. And I started to see the potential for it to be something that is a source of income and not just a hobby. So Harmony Media started in my college bedroom when I made that decision to take it serious.
I love that. I love that when we're just open to the opportunities that present themselves to us and just roll with it. With that, then because it unfolded that way and it wasn't something that you were like seeking out, what fears did you have in the beginning about that? Like the decision point of, okay, I'm not going to go the route of ag sales. I'm going to go the route of this business. What were those initial fears that came up?
I would say, honestly, initially, if we're talking starting that business in the college bedroom, my fears, which sounds silly now, but at the time was, what will people think? What will people think of these silly little videos having a business name tied to them? Because surely that can't be a business, right? As far as the financial piece, nothing was really pressing at the time because, like I said, I was just a junior in college. I was still, focusing mostly on school. Those fears of, like, how is this going to work didn't come up until closer to graduation. But yeah, mainly that people piece. What are people going to, are they going to think it's silly?
Yeah. And then that goes along of, the typical route that we've seen or see is you go to school, you go to college, then you get the interns, you get the job. Like for you to have that, okay, moment of I'm going to come out of this not interviewing, not looking for jobs. That's not my goal here. How do I turn this college experience into then supporting your business journey?
At that point, after that junior year, did you change any classes that you were going to take or not take? Did any of that change from a college perspective after having kind of gone this route, if you will?
Yeah. So as far as my class schedule, not necessarily. I had some electives that I changed, yoga to social media. And I started going to more AgCom club meetings if they had somebody I was interested in learning from. But as far as my college route, I graduated just a semester early. So at that point in the time, I didn't have a whole lot of flexibility, but that was totally fine. One thing I want to mention too is like my agribusiness degree, not knocking the AgCom degree at all, because that is very valuable and I could have learned a lot from it. But I really enjoyed having that agribusiness perspective added on to the craft of storytelling through video that I was able to self-teach, because I was able to see the bigger picture and why communicating matters for businesses, especially the sales piece, that all tied into it. So I stuck with the ag business degree and the course for those reasons. The switch from thinking my career was going to be an ag salesman to, okay, I might be telling stories for a living. That was big. That fear, I guess, like I said, came up closer to graduation, more so the summer before my senior semester. All of my friends had landed internships and I didn't even go to the career fair, you know? So there was definitely that big piece of me that was fired up about what I get to do for this summer of getting to pursue the business and see if it works. And it's so exciting. But then a huge piece of me that saw all my friends living what I thought was going to be my dream with all the big internships and everything. I felt like, oh gosh, am I doing the right thing? Is this going to work? Do I have what it takes? All of that big, scary stuff. But I took that summer before the senior semester to fully invest in Harmony Media. I had a big list of big to-dos that needed to happen by the end of the summer, or I wasn't going to take it full-time post-grad. That's kind of the mindset I went into that summer with, was I need to have a website done. I need to get a bookkeeping software. I need to, set a list of actual goals, basically things that made it a business and not a hobby. Yep. Luckily, that summer went well and I was able to accomplish those big to-dos. And by the time graduation came around, I still had a little bit of that fear, like, oh gosh, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? But I had done the work to at least get started in a confident place. And a lot of those big fears started to slip away.
Hearing you share about this and just knowing the in-depth conversations that we've had within Profit Shift, which we talked a lot about that experience on your last episode you were on, but what are other people going to think? Theme is kind of a core one for you that continues to come up from time to time. And so building that muscle of knowing you're on your path, and that what matters is that you're on your path and other people are allowed to have their opinions. And that's totally fine. Their opinions are from their experience and their point of view, but that doesn't mean that it's the right or wrong thing for you. That's just them coming in with what they know. And so it's totally fine for them to have those feelings, but that doesn't change what's meant for you. So I enjoy that piece was one of the big hurdles for you in going into this, because it does go to show when we can recognize that and start to get over those hurdles, the power of that. Because if you would have let that piece be the thing that stopped you from doing it all, we realize that it's not that big a deal, right? Like, it sure is a fear of ours, but it's something we can work through and dig into. But when we overcome that, we are then giving our gift to the world. And had we let it's not even their opinions, right? Because nobody said it. It was the potential of what they might say. If we let that be the thing that stops us from the outside and the community getting to experience our gift in the way that we have to give it. And not to say that had you chosen another route, you wouldn't be amazing at it and it might have turned out in a different way. But it just goes to show that the fears that we may be facing are so far from like a reality of anything, right? In this case, again, it's the potential of what they might said. Had we asked them, they maybe like would have thought, that is so freaking cool that Makenna is doing her own thing out of college. Like, sure, I'm going this route of career fair, job path, internship, but that she gets to do that, that's so freaking cool. I wish I had the balls to do that. Like, that could have been their response just as much as some sort of, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's doing that. That's really scary. That's not what everyone else is doing kind of thing. Either reaction could have been, but that you didn't let that potential be the thing that stopped you. And then the other thing I gathered from your story is just hearing that business ownership and creating this successful business is literally just taking action, like again and again. You created that list of here's what needs to happen for this to get off the ground, if you will. And so it was just taking that action of do this item, check it off, move on to the next thing and keep moving forward, even if you didn't have the full big picture of what everything was going to look like, just continuing to take that step by step.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's pause the content of the episode to talk about taxes for a minute, because they're not just a once-a-year thing. They're one piece of the financial pie, but not the whole thing. When you're running a business, waiting until March or April to think about taxes is like waiting until harvest season to start planting seeds. You need regular financial conversations, you need up-to-date financial data, and you need a strategy that supports all the moving parts: your income, your expenses, your growth, and yes, your taxes too. So here's your reminder. Don't wait until tax season to find your accountant. Build that relationship now, before the holidays and year-end rush, so you can fully take advantage of their expertise and secure your spot on their calendar. At Sheila Hansen LLC, we're currently accepting new business clients through our monthly support packages. That means you don't just get help at tax time, you get support all year long. We'll keep your numbers organized, your strategy aligned, and your peace of mind intact. You can learn more and apply at hansenllc.net, because your finances deserve attention year-round, not just in April. Now back to the episode. Okay, so once you got launched and you knew that was the route that you were going to go, within these first couple of years of owning your business, has there been anything that you either thought was going to be a bigger deal than it ended up being, or looking back, you're like, oh, I didn't even anticipate that, and then it kind of ended up being something I had to address? Do you have any of those?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind, and I'm going to shameless plug Profit Shift here, and it wasn't an issue yet, but I knew it was going to be. This was taxes. And we talked a little bit about this in the last episode, but it keeps coming to mind as like something that sounds silly. I had never paid a big lump sum of taxes before, being in college and not having a big income. And then the first year of Harmony didn't make a ton of money because I was spending a lot of it. This year, that was going to be a different story. And when we sat down and put the numbers to it, that was a big thing for me. Oh gosh, I was not prepared for this. That was just one of those things that being a business owner, you wear so many hats. It's hard to be 100% on in all of those roles as your own accountant, social media manager, videographer, editor, all the things. That was one of those big learning curves that, all right, I need to pay attention here. That was just one simple thing, but taxes, having a big bill, learning to have a strategy to put money aside and make best use of the income that's coming in, make sure that it's going to the right buckets. like I said, Crawfish Shift helped me a lot there. And then right back to that conversation of what people think, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I literally would get worried sick every time I'd post something on social media, whether it was a 30-second story or a 2-minute reel. I would think about it from every single perspective of, I would look at my story views and see who all saw that. And a lot of them I knew personally. And I think, oh, I wonder what they thought of this. I wonder what they thought, making stories up in my head that, oh, I probably shouldn't have said this if they're going to see it, or, silly overanalyzing, when in reality, like we just talked about, those were made up stories in my head.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it. And what really, I don't remember where I heard this on a podcast or something, but somebody had said, you are the biggest consumer of your own content.
Yes.
And that resonated because I was like, I look at other people's things that they have poured their heart and soul into, and I
You're not
absorb it
analyzing
and I
what
scroll.
words they're using.
No, never. Yeah. I mean, it's like, oh, that was great, or scroll, or whatever it is, but I never take it seriously. And then I know as a creator, that person that posted that thing poured a lot of thought into it, most likely, and they've watched it over and over and over again, or at least that's how I am with my own thing. So when I really put it into perspective of how much time and impact is this little piece of content really taking up in everybody else's lives, if that makes sense.
If they're coming back to watch over and over again, most likely they find some enjoyment in it. Sure, there may be the person who just wants to find the one mistake you made so they could point it out or something. I don't know. But if they're putting that much effort into that, then they've got bigger issues.
That's a them thing for sure. Yeah.
Otherwise, we could just assume that they enjoy what we're putting out there.
Exactly. Yeah. I think something that's helped me too with that is I've got out of the habit of overanalyzing analytics from my social media profile. I mean, I know this is really social media focused, but that's kind of my business. I also do social media management for a few agribusinesses outside of just the videography piece. And so my job is really to dig into those analytics and report those back to the people I'm serving. But when it comes to my own things, I no longer look at story views. I no longer pay attention to likes. I mean, of course, that's important as a social media manager. I know that. But for my own mental sake, I just don't think about it as much. I know that's easier said than done.
And I think when we approach all of that from a very authentic place and showing up authentically, the energy behind all of that is so much more powerful than, do we put the hook here or there, or do we use this color font or that color font, like whatever impacts those like real statistics and data. But if we are posting and showing up from that true, authentic place, the power of that alignment reaching our potential real clients, right, is so much more meaningful than whether it went viral or reached a certain number of people or got a certain number of likes. At least that's what I've experienced in my own business. And there is such that connection and personal aspect to what we're doing, especially in your world where you're talking about you're sharing people's stories and that's the way that you approach it. Just always keeping that in mind is incredibly important.
Yeah, that's big. As soon as I was saying those things, I was like, authenticity helps a lot with that too.
Yeah. And again, it's this muscle that we have to practice, right? We just don't wake up one day and feel 100% confident in doing that, showing up authentically and continuing to show up authentically, or even to know what that actually really means for ourselves. Like you said, in the early stages, it was being concerned and focused on what other people might think. And that probably was still impacting how you were showing up. Maybe it was subconsciously at the time, but it was still impacting how you show up. But the more that you let go of that and the more that you can just show up in the way that you fully want to, that just changes so much for our business.
Yeah. It's a simple I shouldn't say simple, but it's a mindset shift. One of those little things that can
Yeah.
make a huge difference, and not just in the way that I show up on social media, but the way that I talk to clients, the way that I price my services, the way that I, do anything when it comes to businesses, take risks, all of those things. If I do it from a place where I'm confident in, or I guess authentic and trust my gut, then it'll work out the way it needs to. Or at least that's kind of the delusional belief I have in my head.
I think I just shared it the other day, but I saw something. It was like, be so delusional that people don't know if you're crazy or a genius. And then it was like, be so delusional until that becomes your reality. So
Yep.
even if you're in the delusional phase,
Yep.
I believe there's power in that.
I so agree. I'd like to think so anyway.
Yeah. And then coming back to the conversation, you mentioned taxes. Like that is such a common switch, right? When we make that transition from maybe we've had jobs where we are an employee, right? You had internships. You probably had prior to that other things where you were getting paid as an employee. And that looks from a financial perspective one way when it comes to taxes. Most of that gets taken care of in the paycheck to paycheck scenario. We're not having to really plan or think outside of that too much until maybe there's other income that would change that situation. But the general system from a paycheck to paycheck scenario is set up that is happening. It's getting taken care of. You don't really have to think about it. And in a lot of ways, most people aren't even looking at what those numbers are to know the full picture of what they're paying in taxes. But when we become a business owner, there will be a point if we have a profitable business, which again is always the goal because that cash is what we're seeking when we're starting out. When we get to that place, the tax piece is something that will come into play. And it is very common within, that first couple of years. Like you said, it might take a little bit to get the thing up and going, the initial investments that you need to make as far as equipment goes or whatever that might look like, getting your business off the ground. But then within those first 2-3 years, there will be a moment that the tax bill becomes something that we have to plan and prepare for. And so it is very common for us to have to address that piece at some point and understand the difference in our situation going from we were an employee and now we're a business owner. What does that mean? Again, big picture, thinking about, okay, I want to actually have a profitable business. So that means there will be taxes involved in this. Sure, how can we minimize those and take advantage of things as a business owner, and understanding that piece and what it takes, but also knowing it's just something we have to plan for. And that knowledge carries so much power in, again, when it comes to pricing and making business decisions, having that piece layered in to the bigger picture. I'm glad you brought that one up because that is so common within those first couple of years of business. Is there anything else that, for you, this has just been the route that you took, right? It's not like you're able to compare A to B because that was just the route you chose from college. Whereas for me, I can go back and see, okay, I did the corporate life for the first 8 years of my career. So I have that compared to business ownership. Is there anything that you also now can recognize as a difference for you choosing this small business world life?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I am like seeing a list of things pop into my head. And like you said, I don't have the prior corporate world experience by any means, but we talked about my friends that went that route,
Yeah.
that right out of college. And so I get to kind of compare and contrast there. Well, that, and like I said, I do the social media deal where I do social media management with businesses. And so I get to see that world quite often as well. I would say that the biggest difference that keeps popping in my head is just the flexibility in so many different aspects. It's not just flexibility of schedule. When it comes to owning your own business, it's flexibility of profitability, flexibility of the clientele you work with. I get the final say in choosing what direction this business goes. For me, the first thing that comes to mind is like, one of these days I want to have kids, and the flexibility to lay off video projects while I'm on maternity leave for myself or delegate responsibilities when needed, all those things. But also the opposite is true. While I'm in my young 20s and don't have a lot of responsibility, I get to do and make as much as I possibly want. And, while that's available to me. Whereas maybe in a different position, if I had gone the ag sales route or just any corporate America job, that story would not be as true. I may be capped at depending on the company, capped at a certain role or income amount. And then when it comes time to slow down, I may not have that option. So yeah, flexibility is a big thing.
Yeah, I think we often don't think about the flexibility at the speed at which we get to do things. I
Yeah.
think not necessarily from a scheduling perspective, but like how quickly you can pivot your business or how quickly you do implement changes that you're wanting to make, or how slow you decide, like, I'm going to transition in this way, but like it doesn't have to happen tomorrow. Like it can be a quicker or a slower flexibility in that we have, I think, more impact when it's our business versus the career route. Like you said, income, you have your salary or you have, your percentage of commissions or whatever that maybe you can impact in some ways, but really to think about the flexibility of the speed of things is also something that can really be overlooked as a benefit in life. Really getting to, for me now, it's been looking back and being able to see how the seasons of life have changed my business. Like you mentioned, looking forward, there will be seasons of life that maybe change what it looks like for you. But that's the difference. And I know we've talked about your experience with working with your business clients, that again, speed at which you get responses or that it has to go through, a chain of commands for approval or whatever that might look like. We just forget that within our business, like when we make a decision, we can implement it tomorrow. And that is not the case in a lot of corporate settings or other settings. So the flexibility in that speed that we get to dial up or dial down as we need to is also a huge benefit to owning a business.
That's so true. It's so much more than getting to take a Friday off and not have to respond to somebody or, flexibility from a schedule standpoint. That's nice every now and then, but it's so much deeper.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Makenna, I have appreciated you sharing this journey. Like I said, for my own story, I know what it's like to start out in corporate and then go out on my own, but to get to hear somebody's experience of in college, just seeing the opportunity that presented itself for you and then you rolling with it and it turning into this and continuing to make those decisions of what you want it to be. We didn't even talk about, like, you did weddings for a little while and then you transitioned out of that as you saw and experienced what that decision, had made for you. So just really getting to see that you see the opportunities in front of you and then kind of roll with it and fill in the pieces that you need to follow that dream and let that come to fruition has been so cool. So thank you for sharing your journey on the podcast. Where can people find you?
First of all, thank you so much for having me again. I've enjoyed our time. This was a good conversation. And then you can find me mainly on Instagram at Harmony Media. Facebook and TikTok as well, or my website that just got rebranded a month ago, harmonymediallc.com.
Okay, we will post all of that in the show notes. Makenna, thank you so much for sharing your decision to start your business in college and kind of where that has led over the last couple of years with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
For the audience, we will be back next week with another episode. Stay tuned.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Profitable Women. Make sure you never miss an episode by hitting the follow button in your favorite podcast player. And things are always easier when you talk about them with a friend, so be sure to share this episode with them. If you're looking for more ways to grow your financial confidence, head to the show notes for a link to subscribe to our weekly email. Until next time.